You're listening to the Ballet Piano Podcast, lifting the lid on dance accompaniment.
Hello, listeners, and welcome back to this episode of the Ballet Piano. I've realised I always say listeners, and we've got viewers now. I keep forgetting the cameras are there. So hello to the viewers as well. We're all here. This is an episode that we are going to be talking about pretty much the climax of a ballet class, which is the Grand Allegro. But there's so much behind it. But before we delve into this, I'm going to introduce you to the team. I'm Chris Hobson. Akiko's here.
Hello.
As always. Matt's here.
Hello, listeners and viewers.
And, of course, David Yao.
Hi, everybody.
So this episode was spawned. Matt and I were going out for a bougie brunch one day.
As you do.
Had we both played class in the morning?
No, you had played class. I was just,
Oh.
I was doing something.
Okay.
And we were on the train into central London on the DLR, and we got chatting about what you play for a Grand Allegro at school level, at company level, and at open class level, and what are appropriate music choices and improvisations, and what do you do and how do you cope with it? Because especially if you're playing for a company, Grand Allegro can go on for up to 5 minutes on one side, and it can be various different tempi for the gents, for the ladies. If you've got a mixed group, what tempo do you pick? It can be a bit of a minefield of how you tackle it, can't you?
Yeah, because what made me think about this was, and it's not an insecurity, but with the men's Grand Allegro at the company, it's so big and so slow that I do end up generally improvising to create the feel that they want, because some tunes just don't, you can make them fit, but they don't naturally fit into the massive big swing and sway waltz that they're after. And so I end up improvising, or sometimes I've even done this, I'll play ballads with a Grand Allegro feel.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And that sometimes works because then the tune is spaced out as it would be with a ballad, but then you've got the rhythm of Grand Allegro in there. And that way you can still hear the tune as it's supposed to be heard, and I'm not spacing a melody out that's supposed to be, quick and close together. Just trying to, be true to the music. So, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think I have sets of Grand Allegros that I go to. It's sort of in my mental Rolodex of cards. I've got, I don't know, probably, 10s and 10s that I would use in a school. And it can be, start off with Waltz of My Heart, and then it can go into, maybe some Beethoven and some Brahms or something like that. And possibly then have a set in the Rolodex, which is balletic variations and things. So like the big male variation from Don Q, from Le Bayadère, from Corsair, and things like that. But then I have a separate set in my mental Rolodex for a company class, because, and this is again, Matt, what we were chatting about, wasn't it? It's like, I don't feel it's always appropriate or often appropriate to play ballet music and ballet rep in a company class, because that's their bread and butter, isn't it?
I know.
And how you
wouldn't want to really hear it, would you?
It's like, my idea is, if I play Don Q variation for a Grand Allegro in a company, then I think some dancers dance this variation either in the company or in galas and things like that. So the choreography is so ingrained in their body when they hear the melody that maybe it's, it's going to almost be a distraction, or someone's going to look at you and go, oh, bloody hell, you're not playing more ballet music, are you?
Yeah.
So I tend to avoid that in the company. Or in any company. And I think I always have done, even from starting. I remember being told a story by what's great pianist Trevor Walker, who was working, I think, at the time up at Scottish. And he said he had a teacher up there who was asking him to play the male variation from Don Q, and the company were performing Don Q. And he's like, I'm not playing that. It's like they're dancing that tonight. It's like they don't want to hear Don Q ever again. It's certainly not in their ballet class when they're rehearsing it all the time and it's in the rep in the evening. Absolutely not. And I think that's probably stuck with me.
I think in the school level, it might be quite helpful, because a lot of students actually
never heard of it before.
of it
Yeah,
before.
yeah.
Or
They're
never danced it
getting
before.
their music education from you as
Absolutely.
well.
Yeah, and
Totally.
also some boys actually, girls even, the dancers, they feel like they are dancing variation, even if it's just a grande allegro
Yes.
by
Yeah.
listening to
Yeah,
this
the
particular
actual-
tune.
yeah.
Yeah.
So on the school level, it might be a little bit beneficial
Yeah.
to put here and there the balletic
Yeah.
thing.
And when I play a school class, I just play all the ballet music that I know
Yeah.
that I think they might want to hear.
But it's
Yeah.
it's good to train the ear to hear all
Yeah.
different kinds
Yeah.
of music.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Grande allegro.
Yeah.
Opera and classical and popular music.
Yeah.
You can turn that into a waltz or whatever.
ABBA Dancing Queen works beautifully. If
we
you
go.
want a really butch waltz, play ABBA Dancing Queen.
I was once told, to play like Don Q, like the most famous one, to play from the student actually, and then he told me that I've been dancing this with this Don Q tune like. In my local ballet school, but my pianist in my local ballet school didn't know the B section. So she had to just keep playing the A section forever. But no matter how many groups there, then Akiko, can you play the B section, please? So sometimes, playing a B section of the variation.
Didn't you do a Grande Allegro only B sections once?
That was for an assessment in the Western Hemisphere.
Right, yes.
But
Oh, easy for Juan.
it was for it was for an amazing teacher.
Yes.
And he's super musical and he's a very good pianist. I think he would be a very good class pianist.
I've said this to him.
He could save somebody a lot of money and pay off his mortgage a lot quicker. But no, he came. I think I was off for whatever reason, or maybe it was maternity time or paternity. I can't remember. And he said, "Oh, I just want B sections from all the solos." I was like, "Okay, I'll go this. And that's what we use. We use the B section from all the famous waltz
brilliant,
solos."
though.
But I was stood outside of a ballet studio last week or the week before, and I was waiting to go in and do my class, and I was listening to this recording, and I was like, there's a lot of ballet music on this, and there were a lot of waltzes with lots of, and it was a free open class. I was like, oh, that's all right, and it was relatively well played. I didn't screw my eyes up at it too much. And then the teacher came up next to me and went, "This is you. This is." And the teacher who was in the class before us was using genuinely, this sounds like a plug in itself, they were using our Ballet Piano podcast CD, and it was my waltz medley Grande Allegro that they were using. So saying that I never play ballet waltzes for class, I obviously have.
I guess for Grande Allegro, everything has its time and place, doesn't it? Yes. And the situation you're in.
I think so. And you've got to, this comes into, I suppose, reading the room and knowing what you're playing for as well. You've got to, if it's company, you've got to know what their rep is and what they're rehearsing. You've got to do your homework slightly. But then there's only so much that you can butcher those melodies before they then become sort of unusable, isn't there?
Yeah.
So we'll get onto that in a moment. So, you've got to a point sometimes where you've played, all the repertoire that and just something's not right. Either the accent isn't right or the feeling isn't right. And then, for me, then I often just go to sort of improvisation mode. So, as a starting point for my improvisations, I will try and keep the melody similar. So it'll be a bright melody, but I will try and think back to what the teacher has set with an accent. So it is a 1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a 1. I'll just improvise something that's probably, musically, wiping the floor, but it doesn't have to be, not everything has to be amazing. It's just functional for that exercise. So I'll go in with that at that time.
Yeah, just to help them jump and things, no?
Yeah.
And start from there and sort of use those accents to base my improvisation and the melodies on.
Yeah.
I have some improvisations that have now become my tunes. And I'm sure you have the same. I'll play this chord progression that I've been playing for 10 years with no real melody, And then one day I'll think, okay, I'm going to compose a melody over that.
Yeah.
And then that's become my composition for ballet. And then I can 2/4 it up, or I can 3/4 it up and put it in different rhythms
That's really
as a sort of
interesting.
get out of jail card that you know it can work for different feels. If you
Yeah.
don't always have a tune for something, I can put it on 5/4. You know,
Yeah.
if I haven't got a tune for that.
But you
and I
have
guess-
some sort of structure. You still have it there.
Yeah, I've got some things, just my absolute go-to improvs, and then I can transpose them.
It's always
So-
nice to have that in your bag, don't you?
Yeah, I think that's really important as well. I think that comes from just sort of just improvising in class,
Yeah.
realizing it's not going to be pure gold,
Yeah.
but then next time it might be a bit better.
Yeah.
I think some things in class are allowed to be functional. Like, who was it, Matt, who told you that you've got to imagine like you're giving the best recital of your life?
That was lovely Nick that taught me to play
Yeah.
for class.
Which, I mean, I think that is true, and we all have to aim for that. But not every exercise is going to be that, is it? So you've got to accept,
No.
in the same way, I suppose, David, that with teachers, not every exercise you give is going to be gold, is it? Some of it might just be medicinal, or it's just a functional exercise that week because that's what was required.
necessary.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, for example, the first exercise when the girls do the rises on point, when the first exercise when they put the boots on.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll play a tune, but it's just however many rises, slow rises. I just play something that's really functional and
Yeah.
where the tempo is nice and consistent.
I mean, well, depending on how many rises you're asked for, you can't always play a tune, can
well,
you?
no, that's true.
I mean, there are all these things. That, we'll have 7 on a Monday, then 15 on a Tuesday, and then 13 on a Wednesday, depending on.
18.
Yeah, I'll just do 16. I'm sure those 2 rises don't. Nobody ever does 18
Miss a couple.
fouettes.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes like Grand Allegro, a period exercises, like, some kind teacher would come and say, is it okay to go from the left side straight, or do you want to have a break? Do you normally say yes?
I always say, yeah, let's just
I
go
always say
in.
just get on with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, get it over and done with.
But playing for Grand Allegro requires some strength, doesn't it?
It goes on forever.
It
doesn't
does. And I just feel like they're getting bigger and slower. Grand Allegros at company level, especially.
Yeah.
I think I'm playing big and slow, and the arms are going. It needs to be slower. It needs to be bigger.
Yeah.
And I think,
I mean, there is that. Usually, it's the ladies who start, isn't it? And then there's a couple of,
Yeah.
a couple of mixed gender groups, and then you get
Yeah.
to the men. And I just tend to slow it down from the ladies, and then when the mixed is coming in,
yeah.
I slow down a little bit,
Yeah.
and then for the next group of mixed, I'll slow it down until I'm sort of at this male tempo.
But the most
Yeah.
awkward one is like, especially in the company one, and dancer wants slower, but ballet master or whoever's teaching wants
yes.
go like faster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
dancers want slower, and
Yeah.
you're kind of in the middle.
No, I
Yeah.
do what the ballet master says. Always.
Yeah.
In that,
you
And
do
then
what
you
the
feel
teacher
so bad.
says.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes dancers will touch at me for playing the wrong tempo, and I'll be like, it's the teacher that set
Yeah.
the tempo, it's
Yeah,
not
don't-
me.
yeah,
I'm
exactly.
just the messenger.
Yeah.
Especially if you try and adapt the teacher's tempo for an Allegro exercise, and then you are corrected to go to the quicker tempo or the slower tempo.
Yeah.
It's such
The
a good
teacher
exercise for
teacher
them.
is in charge of the tempo.
Yeah.
And
Completely.
It's such a good exercise for the dancers to adapt.
Yeah.
I'm not thinking it's got to be my way or no way.
I think on those Allegro exercises, especially, like we're reading the room, we're reading the dancers. And so we know that we're going to adjust the tempos unless we're told otherwise. But then if a teacher says, or whoever's giving the class says, right, okay, we're at one more group, but then you see, 2 groups lining up to the right-hand side, or they tell you to stop after that group. It's like, I'm not going to start playing for the next group because it is the teacher who's in charge.
course.
Effectively,
Yeah.
the teacher is our paymaster. They are our conductor.
Of
If they-
course.
Yeah.
Whatever they say, we have to do. We don't get out of our box that much to go that, stick our head over the parapet that much. That's not the pianist's job, is it? I think with the Allegro, with anything, but
Yeah.
especially not with that, because the choreography is set, but the duration is not set. So and who knows? It could just be, if they're short on time, it could just be 4 or 6 groups to each side because there's only 4 minutes to get through an Allegro. If you've got 10 or 15 minutes left, they're going to keep coming forever.
They
Oh, yeah.
really do.
I mean,
Yeah.
with that, what do you do? Have you got a sort of a list in your head of what you're going to play roughly, or what? I don't know,
Yeah.
because I think I do. I was just thinking about this earlier when I was talking. I was like, I think I've got separate sets that I would do. So it's like, I know that I'm going to play these. I'm definitely going to stick these four tunes in for the first side, and then I've got another 3 or 4 for the second side. And then if it's still going on, I was like, that's well over 300 bars of music. If it's still going on after that, I'm going to improvise, and I'm going to go to some of my go-to improvisations and my go-to chord progressions for a bit.
I think that's pretty much what I do as well.
I sometimes challenge myself like improvising all the way through, but decide that, I'm going to go semitone down each group.
Yeah.
Just challenge for myself.
Oh, I've done that as well.
Yeah. Or like, okay, I play the major key and then relative key and it goes 5 down.
Yeah.
And then
Or I'll start in C major, and then the second group I play in C sharp.
Yeah.
And then the third group I'll go up a semitone and play in D. So it's got that, it's key change.
Yes.
It's every group, and it's just lifting and lifting, lifting.
it makes a bit different, isn't it?
But then I will, if I played my first tune on the first side, I'll go back to it at some point. I won't just think I'm done and dusted with that.
I do sometimes.
I go back to tunes that I've done. I think, okay, well, there's the 5 tunes I'm using for Grand Allegro today with my own improvs.
Yeah.
And then I'll throw them back in. I don't know.
I do sometimes. I don't know, maybe it depends on what mood I'm in as well. Or if I'm feeling particularly inspired and I can remember lots of tunes. Sometimes you can't remember lots of tunes, only because you've got other stuff going on.
Yeah.
And then when Chris started to be a bit tired of so many groups, and then it gets less note and less note and less note.
It doesn't. It gets more. It's like, come on.
Really?
Yeah, you haven't heard me play the piano for 2 years, so shush.
Do you ever do that though when you're tired? Compensate by playing bigger, playing more notes, filling in more when you're tired.
Yeah. I have done in the past.
Yeah.
It was funny actually coming back to playing after having whatever it was, 9 months off or something like that, because I hadn't touched the keys. And the first class I played, I was knackered.
Yeah.
So by Grand Allegro, I was really tired, and it wasn't that big ballsy Grand Allegro that I know that I normally do.
Yeah. Yeah.
It wasn't sort of like double octaves, this and that. It was, plinky plonky. But
Or as Anita calls it, one finger lil. Love her.
I was one fingering. But yeah, no, it depends on the mood. But I think if you're a beginner pianist, I would suggest get maybe sets of waltzes together and practice them in a particular order. So you could have like 4 waltzes, 6 waltzes, 8 waltzes in a book that if you've got to play for 6, 8, 10 groups on one side, and then if it goes continuous, if you're not comfortable with improvising, there's nothing wrong with printing them off or writing them out in shorthand if you want to do top line and chords, and then practicing that going into this. And if they're in different keys, you could try and work out a fancy key change to go from A minor to F sharp major if you wanted to, or just decide not to, because it'll be a complete surprise when you've got this, A minor variation. The next thing it comes in and it's, it's a big G flat major waltz. Surprises are good in Allegro as well. So do that. And if you aren't comfortable with improvising, but you can you're happy enough to sit at home and noodle around on your piano or something like that, or your keyboard, write down something. Because as we say, it doesn't have to be, not everything has to be gold, does it? Not everything we write, not everything we improvise is going to be Tchaikovsky and Beethoven and Prokofiev.
Yeah.
Unless you're a Kiko. So, just even to fill out those, gaps in between the waltzes, decide, I don't know, you can challenge yourself as a newbie pianist and you're trying to expand your repertoire. You can say, okay, I've got these 6 waltzes that lead into each other well. I know that, but now what I'm going to do when we come back after Easter, when we come back after the summer, is I want one of my improvisations that I'm just going to write it. And it could be 16 or 32 bars. Yeah. And you insert those in between each one. And it might take, you spend an hour each evening on it. And then you can add it in. And as a way to constantly expand your repertoire, that's quite useful for
a lot of experienced ballet pianists still does it too, no? Like they compose their and they write it down.
Someone will come up to me and say, "Oh, that's lovely. What is that?" And I'll go, "It's me." I've been playing that for 15 years. It's me.
Thank you, darling.
Going back to Grand Allegro, I'm always very aware of not sounding stale, either in the way I play or the tunes that I play. I haven't got 100 waltzes for Grand Allegro, but as long as new things are being introduced, it freshens up your little Rolodex of Grand Allegros.
And then reading the rooms, I wouldn't ever, if I was invited not that I would be, but if I was invited to play at the Royal Ballet School, I wouldn't play the finale from Etudes for a Grand Allegro, because that is Etudes is, that is their
signature.
That's the signature, isn't it? That's how their summer performance finishes. So it's like, that's not, it's like maybe at the lower school.
But the kids love it.
The kids, yeah.
Absolutely. Because it just reminds them, that's what's going to come at the end of the year. Yeah. And they get very excited about it. So even if you do play it, you're going to get a response. Yeah. And it's always going to be a good one.
Are you sure?
In my class, yes.
I'm just being a pain in the backside now, because I know actually what I have done.
But how about the teachers?
I love a tune. It doesn't matter what tune it is.
David, come on. What's your loves for Grand Allegro?
I know this one.
I love musicals. So anything from the musicals, the big musicals, I adore because I'm singing along to them.
Carousel.
That's my favorite. So I'm being carried away.
It's a grand night for singing.
All of them. I'm, the Sondheim ones, everything. The classical operas and everything like that. And then
it's lush chords, isn't it? And big lush harmony that really works for Grand Allegro.
You want the sound, the quality of the sound. That's what you're really after, because it's the energy.
Yeah. And the impetus behind.
Yes.
We have to help the dancers to fly.
Absolutely.
And the biggest compliment is when the dancers and teachers say, "Oh, you helped us fly."
Yes.
That's like a really nice compliment that they can pay you. Job done.
Yeah.
Boom.
And I'm sure if it's your tune that they're getting excited about, that must be fantastic.
I mean, it is, but they won't really know it.
But as I said,
it doesn't matter.
Energy.
You said this in pirouettes.
It's not one that they're going to recognise, but
you said it 4 years ago. You said, I remember this quote.
I said it 4 years ago.
You said when we were talking about pirouettes. You
quoted.
Said I remember it so well because I've used this.
Have you got it tattooed on you?
I'll show you later. You
What
said
did I say?
You enjoy knowing that you've helped the dancer achieve the fourth or the fifth pirouette just by adding the little extra breath in there without ruining the musical structure. So helping the dancers fly in Grand Allegro is sort of on that, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's when you know.
Yeah.
I think that is when you know you've been the accompanist for the class.
It's the Feeney trick of taking your hands off the keyboard when they're in mid-flight.
Yes.
Because it feels like they're hovering in the air.
Yeah.
And if you catch them on the landing, I'm sure we all do that. It's Feeney's trick. He may be the first person to do it. I don't know. But I've heard dancers say that Feeney does that, but we all do that.
Yeah.
And that's a thing that feels like they're being held in the air.
When you're playing your own compositions in the middle of all of this and the energy is all really high, are you aware of where the actual composition is going?
For me, yeah. For things that I know I've composed or improvised that's become mine.
Right.
Yeah.
I think I've got a set of probably go-to chord progressions that I will make up the melody over the top, but I've got a rough idea what I'm going to do with the chord progression, I think is what I do.
So you've still got structure behind.
I've got a structure behind it, and it will always, I think my improvisations, what are you laughing at?
I'm thinking Miss Perfect Pitch is going to say something.
Oh, she's going to clip it. It'll be like the voice notes, Matt.
I just play as I go along.
Yeah.
So I know I have an option to go A, B, C, and then I just pick on the spot. So I actually, every time I improvise, everything's different.
Okay. I think if I'm improvising, I want to make it, I don't certainly in Grand Allegro, because no one wants, I imagine, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think people want to be confused by the music. People want to use the music to help them to achieve the exercise. So I wouldn't mess about in the same way that I would do in a Pitti Allegro and do a lot of syncopation and things like that.
Yeah.
I might go like, well, bah. But I'll miss out. I'll do the Feeney trick, but I keep it relatively straightforward and functional, and try not to be meandering. So I think if I'm improvising, I'll sometimes I can't sing, as you've heard in many episodes, but I will sort of almost hum along or sing along, even just mentally to go. So it's like it gives it that musical theatre operatic feel.
And from a dancer's point of view as well, they've done a whole class leading up to Grand Allegro.
Yeah.
It really doesn't want to go wrong for them, does it?
It's got to be. It's got to be
It's got to be helpful.
Yeah, it's got to be a happy ending.
Yeah.
It's the icing.
For them.
Everybody likes a happy ending. Right. Well, on that note, you can follow us. Sorry, I lost it then. Right. If you want to, you please can follow us on our social medias, which are at Ballet Piano Podcast, or sign up for our mailing list, which is available at balletpianopodcast.com. and then we'll let you know every week when we've got new episodes coming out, what they're about, etc. You get all the links to those, all the VOD and the video links, and behind the scenes info, etc., etc. It is worth doing. Even I did it, so just to check it was working. So anyway, I think for now it's going to be goodbye from me.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.